Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode, Baseball Talk with the Buds. At least that's what I'm calling. I'm Quinn Rolo, and I love baseball, especially love talking about baseball. I certainly don't know all there is to know about baseball, which is why I am privileged to learn from my friends here on this call here with Matt and Greco, who I'll hand it over to introduce themselves. I'll kick it over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Quinn. My name is Matt. I love baseball as well, particularly this time of year. I'm very excited about that topic that we're doing today, um, and I get to talk about uh, not just baseball playoffs, but one of the reasons I like the baseball playoffs is because you see ordinary players in extraordinary situations, and they succeed in those situations, and that's what I. You don't see that in any other sport, and that's why I love it.
Excellent. My name's Greco. That's what they call me. Um,
Mhm.
and I am um, probably a bit of an addict about playoff baseball, especially, but just baseball in general. One of the wonderful things that I get to enjoy is I don't live in my home, my favorite team's hometown, and so I get to watch the national game a lot more. And so a lot of these players that have been playing now, I tend to be a little bit more familiar with than some of my local counterparts. So when the baseball season comes up to the playoffs, I get to get excited and actually talk about other players to folks who are around me that I'm more familiar with. And so they're just getting introduced to them, but I tend to have an idea of a little bit more about that. In fact, Mr. Rolo has a question about one of those players.
Yeah. So I need a little insight from someone who has actually played the game at certainly a much higher level than I ever. Um, is Manny Machado as big a dink as he appears to be from just a layman watching these games?
Mm.
I admit I'm still a little sore over him basically in being the cause of the inciting event that led to Pedroia's ultimate demise as a player with his degenerative knee condition that just he couldn't ever get fully healthy from. That all started with that dirty slide on Machado's part. But let me know, in your opinion, because I don't know all the facts, what what role is he playing with all this drama that's occurred so far in this Dodgers Padres series thus far?
Yeah. So, my opinion of Manny Machado started before your little issues with him and Pedroia.
Mhm.
My issues with him started with Josh Donaldson
Hmm.
and um, ground ball, third base. Donaldson fields it. Machado's got to run to third. It's a force. Donaldson tags him. Machado dramatically falls backwards, gets up and gets in his face and starts pushing at him, saying that you shoved me, you pushed me.
Ah,
And Donaldson's like, "What are you talking about?" Like he's literally laughing in his face, like, "What do you?" So whether or not he pushed him a little bit and he maybe lost balance or whatever and he fell backwards, that's up to debate. But it was what happened afterwards that became more notorious. So
Hmm.
after that happened, um, he attempted to I guess force retaliation. He was really jarring back and forth at against my team. And it manifested, I want to say it was the next day, if not maybe even the same game. John Jaha was was behind the plate in his backswing hit Jaha on the side of the head and caused a concussion.
Oh, damn.
So that was a thing. And then the next game, my guys threw at him. So what does
Mm.
he do? He takes another swing, and this time he lets the bat go and it flies over at third base. So that clears the benches. Nobody's a big fan of him. He's been a dirty player for many years, ugly slides, all those things. Now, he goes to San Diego, and for the most part, he's kind of changed his tune to the point where he's gone from one of the bad boys of the game to one of the more elder statesmen who's kind of had a pretty significant turn the other cheek kind of attitude. Particularly when we think about there was an incident with Tatis,
Mm.
and Machado got in his face and was like, "Dude, you got to grow up."
Yeah.
And he's actually been more of a pillar um, on that team.
Mm.
Now, Taylor, did you see what happened during that? You didn't see it,
I
right?
just heard about it. I heard they were throwing baseballs and
Yeah,
beer cans from the stands, which you can't do.
right.
You just can't do that.
So, go ahead.
You know,
Oh,
um, Los Angeles. Don't get me started on Los Angeles.
okay.
But, that's never okay. I don't know what precipitated it or what started it.
Mhm.
But this is the first I'm hearing that Manny Machado was involved. I think they were throwing stuff in Profar.
Yeah. So the beginning of the game, right? Tatis leads off and hits a home run. Right. Bottom of the first, Mookie Betts gets up, laces a ball down the left field line. Profar goes and catches it in the stands, but
Yeah.
almost didn't. I mean, the home team fan had his hands up and almost grabbed it. And when after that happened, Profar started backpedaling and like was taunting him a little bit, but the fan was taunting him back, right? So it was a little exchange. It wasn't anything that negative. Um, and I don't remember the course of events, but I believe that this happened next. Jack Flaherty was pitching, and he was facing Machado. They had a little battle. I think it went to 3-2, and he ended up striking Machado out. Flaherty, as Machado's going out, yells to him, "Sit the fuck down, motherfucker!
Mm. Oh, yes, yes, yes,
Sit the
yes.
fuck
I
down,
saw that
motherfucker!"
clip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Machado's like, "What? You talking to me?"
Mm.
Right? So Machado's chirping back. He's like, nobody says that. Nobody says that to me. You don't get to say that to me."
Mm.
Right? End of the inning. Um, Machado, they're getting it around the infield. They're taking infield a little bit. Ball usually goes over to first. Machado's on the Dodgers side of the dugout. He bounces in front of the dugout and goes over there. Everybody's paying attention now. Flaherty's starting to chirp back at him. What? Why'd you do that? What the fuck? And then Machado's like, "I'll meet you outside. I'll meet you outside. Let's go. I'll meet you outside." Right?
Mhm.
And Flaherty's like, "Okay." Right? Like, that whole thing. But that's where that Machado thing blew up. Now, the ball that was thrown over to the Dodgers dugout shouldn't have been done. Flaherty shouldn't have been chirping, whatever, right? Profar, the next inning, or a couple innings after, whatever it is, brings a ball over to the fan that he caught the ball in front of,
Mhm.
as sarcastically, as a nice gesture, whatever it might be, brings it over. What's the fan do? Throws it onto the field. What's that spark? Everybody throwing the balls in the field,
Mhm.
right? So what was probably a perfect kind of storm really turned into something more significant. Um, I
Hmm.
mean, but Tatis is sitting there and shaking his ass in front of like the fans and like taunting them, and they're throwing the middle finger at him. And but LA certainly got out of control. Certainly get out of
Over a
control.
ball going into the stands. Good thing that's never happened before.
Yeah, yeah. So does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So I guess my long answer about Machado being an ass is, um, I think he's gotten better
Mm.
until he's pushed.
Well, and to what extent is his getting better a byproduct of him playing in friggin' San Diego? So there's probably less attention on him as a result.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there really wasn't a ton of attention on him in Baltimore. I mean, how many
But it,
Baltimore games do you get to see here?
but
Especially when
as
they were losing
yeah,
like they were,
but
right?
as we've alluded to in the past, East Coast games
Oh yeah, yeah,
tend to
yeah.
just
Despite
get a
virtual
little
scheduling.
more coverage as a result of right, just the
Yeah,
scheduling and all
yeah.
that. So,
But I mean, he was lucky enough to play in the Chris Davis days,
mm,
right? Yeah.
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 So interesting. But I'll tell you what, one of the good things that we don't quite get, and is nowhere near what we're used to up here, right? But you think about the rivalries um, that we're used to. LA and San Diego is becoming one of those,
Mm,
Yeah.
right? Um,
this
they're
is
they're
true.
they're two teams who have been, successful and battling it out in that division. And in general, despite fans being who they are or players being who they are, um, I think it's been a um, kind of a welcome addition to some of the drama in baseball.
Well, and nice uh remembrance of how it was, at least on the Red Sox end of things, where both teams spend money. I know the Yankees obviously
Yeah.
still spend money, but the Red Sox don't anymore.
Nope.
Like, but 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 it does remind me the way the Padres and Dodgers are right now. It just kind of reminded me of how Sox Yankees used to be 20 years ago, where they would keep trying to one up each other, and it was like an arms race of trying to build up their teams. And yeah, it's
It's also
it's
a 2 hour drive between the two cities.
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm.
So
Yep,
that's a big part of it.
yep.
Um, and uh, San Diego's lost two teams to Los Angeles.
They have.
It's true.
Yeah.
Clippers and
The
Chargers.
Chargers.
The Chargers, yeah.
So
I still call the Chargers the San Diego
so
Chargers.
do I, Quinn.
Uh,
So
Mm-hmm.
do I.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Cleveland Indians are still the Cleveland Indians.
yeah, yeah.
Washington Redskins is still the Redskins.
Yep.
That's another thing that's kind of interesting, right? Because I don't know if you've heard, but there's actually some tension now because the folks who um, got the names taken away, some of the tribes, the original, like for specifically for the Redskins, the family of the chief, the person who was on the helmet, is offended that they found that to be offensive. That was actually a thing of pride for those folks,
Yeah.
and so they were offended before they asked the people who should have been offended.
Of course they did.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You wonder sometimes how much it kind of reminds me of um to bring it back to baseball, kind of reminds me of like little league parents actually creating more of a problem
Yeah.
over issues than the kids actually are taking the issue. And like the kids don't care, but the parents end up getting more bent
Kids
out of shape because of playing time or whatever. It's like,
kids just
hey,
want to play.
yeah, kids just want to play. And with that name change, it's like, well, are Native Americans as offended as all the white people that were wringing their hands were claiming to be?
Maybe. All right, gentlemen, should we carry on to the next thing? All right.
Yes, indeed.
So, Mr. Taylor, this was your idea. I want you to explain this one.
Well, the reason I like the baseball playoffs so much is because of the names that are forever linked to certain moments in those playoffs. And one player I didn't mention, who I'm going to start off with, even though I've had I have certain series that are favorites of mine, but if you look at Francisco Cabrera, um, who had the pennant winning hit um, in the NLCS in '92. This is a guy that had 500 career at bats, and which isn't even a full season. And he got to get the pennant winning hit. A 2-run single in that. And send the Braves to the World Series. You don't hear that in any other sport. And there was also a story on that because I guess Barry Bonds was in left, Andy Van Slyke was in center, and Andy Van Slyke told Bonds to move more towards center, and Bonds gave him this.
Yeah, yeah. He told him to come in. Yeah, yeah.
And the throw wound up being late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The ball dropped. He could have caught it, and he ended up throwing it late. And that's I brought up in our first conversation. Sid Bream.
Yeah.
He's the one who scored. The
Yep.
slow trotting first baseman for the Atlanta Braves came in and slid home. Yep.
Yep. So, and there's like that. And if you look at, like just the 91 series alone, between the Braves and the Twins, the guy that won the series for the Twins was a guy named G. Larkin, who was basically a career pinch hitter. And he got the winning hit in Game 7 of the World Series in a 1-0 game. Talk about an opportunity. And then, Mark Lemke was a huge factor in that series. He was a utility player most of his career. There was a guy named Jerry Willard who had a sacrifice fly to win a game in that series. I love that shit. And John Smoltz started that season, I think 2-11. And
yeah.
And
he ended up finishing like 10-2 the last half of the season or something. Yeah.
And then he pitched the best out of all of them. He was way better than Glavine.
Yeah.
Avery, Maddox wasn't there yet. And it was just a phenomenal series. And for me, I watched the Braves when I was a kid, because they were on TBS, and I that's what was on, and I watched them, and it was a novelty. And boy, were they fucking bad. Whoa, they were bad. So when they became good, that was exciting.
Yeah.
So I just like that. It brings out like just those ordinary players in extraordinary situations. The other one that comes to mind for the Diamondbacks, Yankees, is Tony Womack. So Rivera only lost one game in his entire postseason career, and that was the Game 7 of that series. And Womack, so it started with a single by Mark Grace, and then I forget who tried to butt him over, but
was it Counsell?
Might have been.
Craig Counsell, owner of one of the most hilarious batting stances in the history of the world.
He was on that Diamondbacks team.
Yep.
I forgot about that.
So they butted him over, and then Rivera threw it into center field. So he's safe there. And then the strangest play. So Jay Bell bunts the ball like between third and the pitcher's mound, and Rivera goes right off the mound, like lightning quick, throws him out at third. And actually, if Brocious was paying attention, he could have doubled up.
He could have.
Bell at first base. That turned out to be a huge play because Womack comes up, hits a 2-run double off Rivera.
With the infield in.
Yep. And that ties the game, and then Gonzalez bloops the single.
Right over Derek Jeter.
Yeah,
right over Jeter. Yeah. and Jeter would have probably like it just would have been an easy out for
Yeah, it would have
him
been right
if
to
they
him.
weren't pulled in, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, they had to pull him in though.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, right.
especially with
Yeah.
yeah. So now the interesting thing, and Mr. Taylor's done a great job of you know talk about this, and I love the stories behind it because that's the romance of baseball, right? The idea is that each of us is going to come up with 5 series that we think were some of the best we've ever been able to see. So Taylor, would you say that those two are up there for you?
Those are my two favorite World Series. Um, and then now that I think about it, there's a lot of, obviously I got to put the 2004 ALCS in there. And then, you know, the two, the two series in '86 between the Mets and the Astros and the Red Sox and the Angels. And then two honorable mentions that I have, or one honorable mention I have, is if you look back to 1980, there's a series between the Phillies and Astros. It was a phenomenal series. Almost every game went into extra innings, and it was a one-run game. And I remember an at bat by Pete Rose in that series, and that was a phenomenal series. And then, obviously the Braves and the Pirates in '92 was a great series too.
Mhm. Yeah.
So those are at the top of my list.
Now, um, I'm curious about you two, and I want to hear you two kind of wax poetic about it, since you two are huge Boston fans. I remember a 2 year stretch of playoff baseball, both on the National League side and the American League side. For me, the and this isn't even part of my list. I mean, but the list could be massive. That's why I asked how many you had, because I had like I could come up with 30. But the 2003 series with the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Yeah,
At the same time, you had the Cubs and Marlins.
Cubs and the Marlins with the Bartman game in that
Yeah,
series. Yeah.
and that series was phenomenal.
yeah,
Yes, it was.
And,
Yes, it
and
was.
and and think about the implications of that World Series had it gone differently for those two teams, and you would have had the two cursed teams in
yeah,
the World Series guaranteed. But
yep.
I digress. The next one I think obviously was better. Rolo, 2004 is going to be on your list.
Obviously,
Yeah,
the ALCS, which was really the ultimate winner of the World Series, was going to come out of the ALCS that year. I
yeah,
mean, the Cardinals. I don't even remember who the Cardinals played in the NLCS that
Astros.
year. It was the
mm-hmm.
Astros. Oh, right, because the Astros were still in the National League back then. So, I mean, like the Cardinals, like we had picked up so much steam after you know becoming the first team to ever come back from 3-0 against our vaunted rivals.
Yeah,
That there was no chance that we were going to lose to the Cardinals. So that World Series, from a game standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, was actually kind of like not entertaining. But from a breaking the curse standpoint, it was obviously the most memorable of all time for me.
Yeah. So thinking about this, and I just want to interject here because I think Roll you'd appreciate this. I always thought of 2004 ALCS being the Godfather 2
Mm.
to what should have been an amazing movie, Godfather 3, in the trilogy. The Red Sox and Cardinals was never going to live up to the implications and how dramatic and amazing that series was. So I want you two as Boston fans talk about that. Talk about the little intricacies. Taylor, I know you're full of them. Those little things that we're missing.
um,
So
I'll tell you this: I'll never forget the atmosphere surrounding the team. I went to like the Bell in Hand the night of Game Three.
mm,
Never forget the looks on people's faces
oh,
after Game Three. I'll never forget
oh,
it. 19-8. They
Terrible.
pounded Bronson Arroyo. Um, and the other guy that I was like throwing shit at the TV over was Ramiro Mendoza, who pitched for the Red Sox in that game. And he was horrendous, dude. He was so horrendous.
I forgot about him.
And I'm like, you know, the next day I was just like, don't. I think I was at a Patriots game the next day, but I was like, just don't go down like a bunch of pussies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just
Mm-hmm.
go down fighting. And boy, did I, you know, I didn't expect that. The Yankees will never live that down.
Nope. Nope. Like Millard said in that now infamous footage in during BP or during like a media session or a little scrum or whatever, he was just like, "Don't let us get one. Don't let us get one." And Matt is so Matt, were you at Game 3?
No, no.
Okay, okay.
I
I
was
just
in
want to make
town.
sure because that would have been extra depressing if you were actually at Game 3. Oh
No.
man, because I had the privilege of being at Game 4 with my dad,
Oh,
and
wow.
let me tell you something. We were like, I could tell, like, if my dad was less of a hardcore Red Sox fan, I wouldn't have been shocked or given him, I would have understood if he said, like, I don't want to go to this funeral. Like, it's going to be terrible. We're going to get swept. We're
Yeah.
going to watch this. But, my dad was always the type that even when we're losing, like, hey, we stay to the end. We stay until the end of the game. And so obviously, it's a championship series game against the Yankees. Hell, let's go. Like, what's the worst going to happen? We get thumped again. We just got thumped last night. Let's give it a try. But if I recall, it was a rain. There was a rain, so that we ended up having an extra day,
Mhm.
and that seemed to like I don't know, cleanse the bad juju that we had going because there was something. Getting back to this whole topic that we started the episode with about the ball being, balls being thrown back on the field. One of the most emblematic moments that I don't know how much play it got on TV that happened in the park that was awesome was when A-Rod hit a bomb over everything in like the fourth inning, fifth inning. It was in the middle of the game. Someone from outside Fenway, like while he was rounding the bases, threw the ball back over the green monster and it landed in the field.
I've never heard that. Wow.
And Damon, I'm pretty sure it was Damon, just took it and like threw it back. And then someone threw it back onto the field. So then they stopped
Wow.
trying to throw it out.
I've
And
never
it
heard
was
that
just,
story. That's phenomenal.
and it was just kind of like a not today. And it's like, you're not going to beat us today. And then, Mariano Rivera, who, even after that, chink in the armor that he got in Game 7 of the World Series against the Diamondbacks 3 years prior, was still like, lights out. You never wanted to face him. But Millar drew that walk. Roberts got that steal. Miller got that hit and tied up that game in the ninth. And then Poppy off a Quantrill in the bottom of the 12th, just past midnight. And that sent us home. I don't know. I don't know if my dad and I, have ever been more elated than at the end of that game because it was just like, oh, at least we didn't get swept. And then just later that day, because it was like a 4 o'clock start for Game 5.
Yep.
Later that day, it was like this. Like it was like the fulcrum of power was shifting, and it was this massive tug of war between both teams. Because then that extra innings game in Game 4, and then Game 5 was 14 innings,
Yeah.
and Esteban Loaiza, or Esteban Lauza, as my dad used to, gave up that. I mean, it wasn't a bad pitch. Like I think it almost broke Poppy's bat, but Poppy was able to still muscle that base hit into center field, kind of a blooper that was able to score Damon, that had us win Game 5, and then Game 6 was the classic, swat of the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's glove by A-Rod. That also had the really the like controversial home run that initially wasn't a home run by Mark Bellhorn because they thought it hit the wall, but it actually hit like the stomach of like a fan,
Yeah,
and the umps had to get together, and it was before they
yeah,
used replay to like reverse things or anything
right.
like that. The umps had to actually get together and decide on, yeah, that was a home run,
And you made
and
the right
and
call.
and it was the right call, and then. Huh, justice in 2000 to to um, help kind of relieve the fried nerves that we had because games, because the Sox Yankees went to Game 7 in 2003, the Pedro game, Grady Little, or the Grady Little game, I should say, left Pedro in too long. And I remember my dad and I were watching that game on TV, and I remember feeling confident, like, hey, Sox are going to pull us out. We're going to get to the World Series. And my dad, I swear, he had a sixth sense. He's like, something, I don't feel good about this. Like, he was getting nervous with Matsui. He was getting nervous with Pascal. Like, he was getting nervous with every single Yankee that was going up to plate. And he was like, I just don't feel good about this. It's too close. And then sure enough, we lost. So it felt so, like, relieving to have Game 7 of 2004, of the 2004 ALCS, be a blowout.
Yeah.
That was refreshing.
Well, in 2003, I don't know if I ever told you, but I was still living in New York at the time.
Mm.
So
Oh,
I moved back to Massachusetts between 2003 and 2004. And before that night, I was watching the game here. And then I had to drive back in the middle of the night. And I lived in Westchester County, about a mile from the Bronx border. And my landlord was a cop at Yankee Stadium.
oh,
And
really?
yeah, I got home at like 3 in the morning in New York at Pelham, and they were all waiting for me.
Uh,
They're all waiting for me.
of course they were.
So, I made a lot of phone calls the next year.
Like, remember me?
Yep.
I'll tell you what, as a guy who had no dog in the fight, if anything, I was almost cheering for my ex players that left
Mm.
for greener pastures.
So
Um,
folk then? Folk maybe on the
Folk,
Sox? Yeah.
Giambi, Damon,
Damon, yeah.
um, Brocious. I mean, pick one on either
Uh,
side, and I got another one for the other. You know, but living here in Boston and hearing the lore of some of the things that I'm sure are going to be coming up here, even more, um, in knowing how just down and sad the Boston fans were. There was something about that year that just collectively, I think, brought more, I guess, eyes on the series, and that
mm,
rivalry was probably at its hottest. I mean, you're talking about, almost 20 years of history now between the two teams. But, you know, that was some of the most legendary characters on either side,
Yep.
on the Red Sox side, on the Yankee side. The loss of Garcia Parra. That was the same year that Pedro sidestepped.
Zimmer.
Yeah, Zimmer, our
Yeah,
buddy
yeah, yeah.
Zimmer,
Yeah.
and I mean the batted ball, like you said, out of the glove, the Veritek
Hmm.
to the
They're like
face,
smushed in the
A-Rod.
A-Rod's face.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
but the idea that A-Rod was Boston bound
He
just
was.
before that. I mean,
Yeah.
He was.
talk about the drama for that series.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the only one that's on all three of our lists is
Mm-hmm.
2004.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is the culmination of it. And, being somebody from the outside was always like, oh, you know what? There's no way they're going to pull this off, winning the series after being down three. But there was a sense of inevitability that it was going to happen, right? And it's almost a sense, and I kind of alluded to this before, that I almost felt like that would have been enough despite
Not for
despite
me.
yeah, well, see, yeah, for me, that was the best drama in
Mm.
baseball we're gonna
Yeah.
see, and it was 2 years in a row, like I said.
Yep.
So,
I just remember, now that I'm thinking about, what came after that epic series in the World Series, I do remember, what play actually stands out the most to me in aside from the call, back to Folk. Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. And, Folk just underhanding it to first, to Minkiewicz, I think was at first. But the play that stands out the most to me was I think in game 3 against St. Louis. We were in St. Louis and there was all this talk about, oh, well, Poppy's been the hottest hitter. He's the most clutch hitter. They got to keep him in the game. And this goes back to you know, back to, NL doesn't have the DH yet.
yeah, liability at first.
Yeah, liability at first, but then Poppy ends up making, I mean, it was more of a boneheaded play on Jeff Supon's part than it was a great play
Yeah.
by Poppy, but
Think
still
of that.
unconventional play where I believe there was an out at first, and then Poppy noticed that Supon had rounded third too much. He got caught in
Yeah.
between home and third, and then he was running back to third, and Poppy, dying on the spot, just like gunned it right to third, and they tagged him out. And I'm like, I mean, you can tell me better than I know, Greco. Like having to throw it from first to third, that's not a common occurrence really
No.
in the course of the game, right? So like that could be an easy thing, especially for a guy who's not playing the field that much, and Poppy to like really mess that play up, but yet he nailed it. It was a great kind of ends up play.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and just throwing behind a runner in general
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is not the best idea. Now,
Yeah.
had he been a seasoned, I mean, whatever, he's better than anybody I've ever played with, no matter what, defensively at first base. But a lot of guys, their first instinct would be to run towards the runner,
Oh,
right?
right.
Make them freeze, and
Mm-hmm.
then figure out where you're throwing. But he
Mm-hmm.
just instinctively, and you know what, for for that, I mean, Supon was already on his way back, so there was no way, he could have played it safe, but he was aggressive with it, and it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Colossal mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Colossal mistake by Supon. Yeah, I remember it well.
yeah.
Um, and I think another big play from the World Series, a really uneventful World Series, was Bellhorn hit a huge home run in that series too, and hit the foul pole.
Hit the,
Right field,
boom, made a
left
huge
pole.
dong. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, by the way, sorry, Bellhorn,
Yeah.
one of my old guys too.
Also in
Oh,
it,
yeah.
was he like sort of the Greek demigod of walks? Because
Yeah.
he could
Now
he
that
could
that
draw
was
a
that
walk.
was
Not
yeah, he was the guy who moonlighted after um JP Santangelo ended up
Wow.
somewhere else. So, all right. So, we could talk about '04. That could be a whole nother episode. But more series there, Rolo.
well, not to really rub salt in the wounds to you, Greco, but I gotta bring up another series. So expanding the field here now. This isn't World Series. This is an ALDS. What led off 2003 is giving me some confidence that we were gonna do something that year.
Yeah.
We're down 2-0 against your A's. I believe Hudson and then Zito shut us down in games 1 and 2. But
I
then we
lost.
came.
I
Is
lost
that right?
$500
Oh, you did?
on that one. Yeah.
No. What I ultimately want. So I mean, there's I mean that was a memorable series. Particularly when you get down to Game 5, we're playing in Oakland, and uh, that was the game where Damian Jackson collided with Damon as they were.
Mhm.
Jackson was going back on the ball and Damon was
Yeah.
coming in. I just remember because Damon was really good for us that year, and so seeing him get like crushed like that, and I think honestly he had to get stretchered off the field. And I remember my dad just being like, oh, like we need I was okay. Like that just looked bad. And I don't think he ended up missing any games. Maybe he missed game one of the ALCS, but like he didn't really miss much after that, from what I recall. But I just remember that being like, oh, where's this gonna go? Like this is gonna be a big loss for us. But then when Derek Lowe came in and shut it
Yeah.
down, I gotta ask you, Greco, where do you land on this whole kind of mini controversy that occurred at the end of that game and the celebration that D'Lo had? Was he just kind of like giving a very like enthusiastic kind of pump of the fist, or did he give a very deliberate kind of crotch chop to the ace after he sealed the deal?
So I will tell you that I have no idea what the hell you're talking about as far as whatever Derek Lowe did. Never bothered me. What bothered me
Mm.
was the interference call that never was
Oh,
at the plate with Eric Burns.
Eric
He was,
Burns. Oh,
yeah,
that guy. I
when,
memory hold him.
when he was caught and he went too far. Another play from third to home went too far. Should have been awarded home, but was tagged out instead. Now
That was at Fenway, right?
that was a Fenway.
Yeah.
That would have won the game and ended the series. Now, interference is a subjective call, but to me, there was nothing that that subjected that was subjective at all. Now, the only bastion of you know I guess redemption that I had was the potential of the Red Sox and the Cubs going to the series.
Mm.
But I'll tell you what, when you guys blew that, it made me hate you more. Because
Yeah.
not
I
only
don't.
did you take some of my guys and waste their talent, you went and squandered our opportunity, which I thought was probably going to be our best opportunity in the Moneyball era, because I know there was more players coming off the books. I know we were losing more guys. We were losing Jason Isringhausen. We were losing half of our pitching staff. It wasn't long after that Huddy left. Um, and so that was painful for me, especially having now um, that being 2 years in a row being knocked out in the first round,
Mm.
Yeah.
and to go out that way with such a horrible call. I was not happy with that. And it's funny how you remember all the other shit calls that goes against you guys, but the ones that go in your favor, you're like, oh, what? Eric Burns on the field? Who's that?
I don't remember
Oh,
that.
I don't remember that at all. Right? But I do tell you, I don't know if you remember this. You guys actually got a call, and I'll never forget this because, and it may have been in playoffs. You actually got a call in favor of you, very similar, if not exactly the same. I don't remember who the runner was for you, but I remember my boy, Ramon Hernandez, getting called at the plate for interference on a pickle that we had to run down, and you guys were awarded home.
Oh,
Yeah,
In the playoffs?
it might have been. I didn't think so, but it might have been. Listen, there's no salt in those wounds because you boys squandered it. And you know what?
Yeah.
If I'm not happy with that, um, and Taylor, you brought up TBS. Well, where I was, WGN
Yeah.
was what I got to watch, and so I get to watch the Cubs.
Yeah.
And so Cubbies have always been my number two. Um, and I mean, I get to watch the Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game.
Yeah.
You
were
know,
you there in person?
no, I wish, but
Oh,
I was
okay.
watching it. I was waiting for Chinese food, waiting for my shift to start at CVS. And I was watching that afternoon game. What a wonderful freaking game. But I'll tell you what, you boys are miserable and you did it to yourselves. You could have just let my boys play and it would have been a different ball game. You wouldn't have had to worry about Grady Little. He would have, so whatever. Water under the bridge. Next, Rolo, more.
Well, uh, I gotta say, for as memorable as that ALDS was, the ALDS that might actually have it beat is Red Sox Indians 1999.
Yeah.
That was another one that was a knockdown, drag out, huge swings, huge blowouts on both sides in that series, culminating in Troy O'Leary hitting. Uh, did he hit dingers from both sides of the plate in
Oh,
Game
you hit a
Five of that
grand slam
series?
and a 3-run homer.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. And then Pedro coming in after he left early from his start earlier that series and coming in the bottom of the fourth and pitching a no-hitter for the rest of that game to shut the Indians down, where it was clearly established no lead was safe.
Yeah.
And Pedro was like, Jimmy put me in, and he shut the door. And who knows to what extent that may have had a ripple effect on the rest of his career because
He was hurt.
I think
Yeah.
because he was hurt. Like he had it was like a back issue I think he was having or
Yeah.
he was struggling with. And he still had a few more really obviously dominant years left, but I mean by the time we got to 03 and 04, he wasn't the same guy. He was still pretty good, but he obviously, wasn't as invincible as he was in those earlier years with us. Um, and that was, perhaps his greatest moment in the playoffs was that game because in 03, unfortunately, he's most remembered for losing it in game 7 against the Yankees. And then in game 4,
Ugh.
excuse me, in 2004, wasn't that was I forget if it was in that series or if it was just throughout that season when the Yankees kept rocking them that season. That was when the "Who's your
Yeah.
daddy?" and all that
Yeah.
chanting. So, and also this is just an aesthetic thing, but Pedro had the long hair going, and so my dad and I would just call him Princess Pedro with the way that it kind of hung down underneath his cap. And I was always more of a fan of like post cream. Made it look a little more dense on the map. So so that 99 is just absolute tops, and to see him just shut the door the way he did against that team was absolutely epic. So, and I remember obviously keeping this to playoff series that I remember watching. That one obviously stands out quite a bit. It's one of the earliest ones that I really remember watching because I was 16 years old.
I was at game 3 of that series.
Oh, you were?
Yeah. They won 23-7.
That was one of the blowouts. Yep.
What an Indians team, though, by the way.
Oh,
I mean,
stacked.
Jim Thome, Manny,
Bartolo Colon was on that team
yeah,
still. Yeah.
yeah, Omar Vizquel. I think Lofton was still there, or he returned. He came back. That was
Yeah,
was
they're
a
stacked
tough
Indians team.
squad.
Yep.
Yeah. All right,
Which
next.
which reminds me of the World Series, and I hope this may end up being, I guess, maybe one on your list, Greco's. Because I never knew Cubbies were like your number 2, but I mean, 2016, holy shit! Talk about a World Series befitting of a curse-breaking, kind of victory. Not only it going 7, but then going against the Indians, where they had their own drought. What, they haven't won a series since 1948, so it's obviously not as long as the Cubs, but it had been a long time for them too. And that game was freaking back and forth. I don't know, aside from Yankees Diamondbacks in 2001, I don't know if there's any other World Series that I've been any other non-Red Sox World Series that I've ever been as locked in
Yeah.
as I was that Cubbies. And part of it too was, kind of the dynamic that you're describing, Greco, about following, your players on other teams. Obviously, Lester was on that Cubs team, as much as I know you hate him. Uh, uh, and of course, Theo, you know,
Yeah.
being the curse breaker.
Yeah.
Um,
And don't forget David Ross and what an
David,
impact he
yes,
played for you guys and them.
absolutely. Yep, yep. Great point. Great point.
Well, think about like the player in extraordinary situations, ordinary player Rajay Davis, right? It's a home run. It ties the game in the ninth inning off of Chapman.
Quite.
Like crazy.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what. So I have a soft spot for Rajay because Rajay came to Oakland as a throw-in player for a trade we made with the Blue Jays. And he was pretty much from his own testament, if I remember correctly, that he was almost going to retire. And Oakland shoved him in center field. And they just stuck with him. And he ended up putting together an amazing career. And so seeing him in that moment and excelling, especially on that stage, was amazing. To me, him as a player was just a long line of, fantastic guys who were cast off that ended up being impact players for Oakland that turned into something else and impacted the rest of the league for the rest of their career. Yeah, that is certainly on my list. Just, between Andrew Miller and, Chapman in those battles. The
Andrew Miller, and the way Francona was using Miller, wasn't that like that was I feel like he was the genesis of using a reliever as like that like swing reliever to
impactful moments instead of
yes, instead of
at,
having a
at the end
yes.
of the game. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now, the other piece too of all this is you had guys like Ben Zobrist,
MVP.
who, yeah,
Yep.
I mean, one of my favorite all time guys. Just somebody who can play anywhere in the field, right? And just a utility player, but a valuable utility player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and along those same lines, Chris Bryant, who, wild in obscurity now that he's in Colorado.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, that boy played every position in the outfield. He played third. He played short for them. That's when you had Starling Castro moving over for Addison Russell, who Addison Russell was an Oakland A's guy that we actually traded to the Cubs for. They got him back that year, and he pitched with Lester. I'm drawing a blank now. He was their number two. We got him and the dude with the long hair that used to pitch for San Francisco after us. Oh, why am I drawing a blank? Anybody get their Google machine ready?
Yeah, I'm
Oh, gonna kill me. Addison Russell trade.
Wasn't Lincecum.
No.
Kyle Hendricks, Jake
Kyle
Arrieta.
Hendricks. Yeah. Oh, wait, Arrieta. No, it wasn't Arrieta. But that series was amazing. And there was a sense of that was inevitability too, you know. Jason Hamill and Jeff Samardzija.
Oh, Samardzija. Yeah. Samardzija. Yep.
And we got Dan Straley, who ended up becoming a phenomenal pitcher. He ended up doing better for us than Samardzija did. And then he ended up in Florida and did really well. Now, funny, I don't think they're going to make any of our lists, but just when I was doing some research for us, Florida Marlins highest winning percentage in the postseason all time.
Hmm.
They were like 94%.
Wow.
Well, and that's probably because they either suck or when they get into the playoffs, they win the World Series.
Yeah.
That's because like 97 and 2003, those are the
But
2 years that they won the World Series, right?
yeah, I mean, and for a team that's been in existence that long, and then you look at like the San Diego Padres, you look at the Cleveland Indians
Mm.
or Guardians, you look at even like, the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, it's been a minute. So
Yep.
anybody wants to throw shade at the Marlins, throw shade at their business practices and how they blow up the team after they do it. But when they go, they win.
Yep.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Rolo,
Yep.
do you got any more?
I rattled off. Those are the ones. Oh, in two, just another little anecdote. The 2001 World Series when the when the Diamondbacks pulled it out. Never have I seen such an explosion of celebratory and incensed like rage. And because I was on campus at Assumption College,
Oh,
which drew a lot of Connecticut and I'm sure maybe some New York people to that campus. Like I know there were Yankee fans there, but there are obviously plenty of Red Sox fans. So it was really split. And let me tell you, the dorm hall was a loud and chaotic environment when Game Seven concluded because of, and I didn't take part in any destruction, but some destruction of some stuff after that game ended.
Yeah.
That really highlighted how much uh, people were pissed if they were Yankees fans because the Yankees seemed like the team of destiny, given
well,
the fact that
especially
it was
after
just one.
after 9/11,
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to say, and I don't know about you boys, but I get the sense, and I certainly was part of this, that it would have meant more to me to see New York win that series. Um, I got to go to um, some Patriots games that year, and that was the first year of Brady winning, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I was actually at the game that I think it was the first or second game that Brady started.
Mm.
Um, and I'll tell you the atmosphere of how everybody was treating each other was amazing. I mean,
Hmm.
it was, and you got the sense that what that year, yeah, we weren't a New York team, at least in New England, and I'm not a Patriots fan, but to have a team named the Patriots
Mm.
Yeah.
win after 9/11 seemed almost too convenient, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, had the Yankees won, there would have been something poetic about that.
Would have
So
been their fourth straight World Series.
Yeah.
which
Right.
unbelievable, right?
Ridiculous.
Yeah, unbelievable. Um, was that your last one, Rolo?
That was my last one.
All right. So mine, I gotta say that two of them got knocked off.
Mm.
2004, obviously ALCS. That was number two for me because I mean, talk about just like I said, the rivalry, the story, all that leading up into it. Um, just the fevered pitch. I mean, I remember sitting literally when they say that you're on the edge of your seat. Those 2 years, 2003, 2004, watching those series. Again with the Cubs and Marlins and Yankees, Red Sox, both years, I was literally on the edge of my seat.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I missed the pitch. And obviously the Cubs and the Indians, that was a phenomenal series. Um, Thinking back, um, you know, I think that whole um, and this is kind of cheating, but that whole journey that I think Kansas City went on
Mm.
in 2015
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
from the wild card play-in throughout, their series, in the championship series, the divisional series, and then into the World Series against, what everybody thought was going to be a team of destiny, which was the Giants, and because it was an odd year, right? I mean, the
Oh,
Giants
right.
had won
Yep.
2011,
Mm-hmm.
2013. This was going to be their opportunity. It was an odd year. They were destined to win, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that to me was certainly one of those just the whole playoffs, just their
Mm-hmm.
journey was something magical to me. Um, and I mean, and that's when you had, and I always liked him. People shit on him now, but Eric Hosmer, I thought
Yeah.
was a phenomenal player. Lorenzo Kane in the outfield, Billy Butler, Alex Gordon. I mean, you had some really phenomenal players out there. And then, some guys that you think about that, maybe a little below the the radar for the most, average baseball fan. You talk about, Guthrie.
Mm.
And, he always was that gritty kind of pitcher who didn't knock the doors off anybody, gave up a few runs here and there. But I'll tell you what, my man took the mound every time and he was consistent. And then you had Greinke,
Yeah, was
who
Greinke on that Royals team? I'm trying to remember.
I
Or
believe he
had he already
was.
left?
I
Yeah,
believe
he
he
was.
was. And I think he went because I think that was when he came back for a little bit. Um, I could be wrong. Now you make me second guess myself. But I mean, he was a guy who, with his anxiety issues and
Yeah.
all those things, as somebody to overcome that in a baseball atmosphere and being that guy on the mound of all things was incredible. So that one, that whole series of games for the Kansas City Royals was huge for me.
Yeah.
Um, Rolo, was I wrong? Was Grinky on
I
it?
I'm
Oh,
gonna look that up
thought,
right now.
I thought that's what you were doing.
Greinke Royals tenure.
2015.
Who Greinke primarily played with the Royals, two stints, 2004 to 2010, and from 2022 to 2023.
Um, so he wasn't with them.
So he wasn't.
He was with the Padres.
He was with the Dodgers in 2014 and 15.
Man, so he wasn't even on that team. All right,
No.
I take it back. I hate that series. Um, just kidding. Um, you know, another one that came up for me. That I really thought was good. And now I'm gonna double check some of my notes here, although I didn't take notes. Um, was um, you know, when you think about the history of the game and um, how things played out, a lot of times you're not thinking about um, you know the Nationals and their run to the postseason because it was such a weird World Series,
Yeah.
right?
Was.
Not a single home team won a game in the World Series
Yep.
that year.
Yep.
That
That's
was
amazing,
Yeah.
quirky as
right?
hell. Yeah.
Yeah, and talk about a surprise team to even get there. I mean, they just lost Bryce Harper.
Yep.
Yep.
Not a lot of notable ads. I mean, Anthony Rendon, as crazy as the boy is now, and how much he hates the game that he's paid to play. Um, what was phenomenal then? The emergence of Juan Soto,
Yep.
right? the
World Series.
yeah, I mean the end of Zimmerman and what he meant to that franchise. You know, I don't think that can be lost. Um, you know, those those games and that team and how they kind of affected and it kind of lasted a little bit longer for me. Because I don't know if you guys get the same sense, but that was the real last um baseball that we kind of get to see because the very next year
It was
was
COVID.
Yeah.
COVID.
Yep.
And that was, kind of the end of the line as far as you know, um, what a true World Series was for 2 years. And that
Hmm.
was actually in the off season of that is when the whole Trash Stros thing came out. And
Yep.
Stros.
Yep.
and that certainly was something that made me, kind of, shrinkle the old nutsack a little bit. Um, because I'll tell you what, um, that was awful, you know,
Yep.
um, and the impact of the game on that. Now, um, I think my other one, and this will probably surprise you, because my boys were the victim, but my boys knew how to lose in style. Um, and again, a lot of times it comes down to one game, right? My boys were playing against Detroit in the ALCS, and I'll tell you
Magpie.
what, yeah,
Maglio.
Maglio Ordonez,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and I mean, talk about keeping the wrong guy quiet. They kept Cabrera pretty quiet during that series, and
Hmm.
Maglio was just a problem
Yep.
consistently.
It was his bomb that clinched
Home run. Yeah.
the
Yeah,
series, right?
Yep.
that was it. That's what did it. Um, I was so I could I know when a game is impactful
Mm.
because I can tell you exactly where I was.
Oh.
Right, I was sitting down in a little place called Maddie's Italian Cafe, eating chicken saltimbocca with a
Mm.
glass of red wine after
Just
eating a
just
nice
playing right, just
antipasto.
leaning into that stereotype there.
Yeah, seriously, right? But like legit, sitting there watching this. And the second he got up and hit, I was devastated. And that wasn't even the end of the series necessarily because we still had some time left, but that was it. I could feel it. We were done. It was not. It was not getting any better for us. It was only going to get worse, and that was it. Um,
And yet that was another case of Detroit not being able to cash in, though, right? Because didn't Detroit play St.
they
Louis and
lost
St.
to
Louis
St.
beat them?
Louis. Yep, they lost
Yeah.
to St. Louis. Yep,
Yep.
they lost to St. Louis. Um, which brings me to my all-time favorite series. And again, it usually comes down to one game that makes it.
Mm.
But two teams, one team that I actually liked, even though they were a rival of my number two, and one team that I hated. But I'll tell you what, some of the most dramatic and best baseball that I think has ever been played. And I think because of the two teams, it doesn't get the attention it deserves. But what a damn series. Texas and St. Louis.
Yeah.
Mm.
Those games were phenomenal. And I mean, everybody thinks about game six, and they should, rightfully so. I mean, St. Louis down to the last out after facing, Nelson Cruz, and him gunning. I don't even remember who it was. He gunned somebody out at the plate from right field. Um, and I mean, destroyed. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. That was on the way to the series. That was Miguel Cabrera. Um, they knocked out the Tigers to get there. So that I'm mixing that up. But I'll tell you what, um, you had Elvis Andrews, Adrian Beltre,
Mm.
Nelson Cruz, um, you know, this was the back in the days when K Rod was over there and just throwing fire and
Well,
um,
now Ron Washington was
he was the
coaching the
manager.
Rangers,
Yeah,
and
Manager, yeah.
he's a former A, right?
yeah, he's a former A. And the other side, Tony La Russa.
Oh, right, of course,
Yeah.
sir.
I mean, come on.
That's
Um,
why it's near and dear to your heart. Again, just
no,
former A's.
no, I'll tell you what, man. What did it was the guy, and these are the stories that I love. The hometown guy, David Freese from St. Louis,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
came up,
Forgot about that.
tied the game with a triple, being down to the last strike
Mm,
in the game, tied the game with a triple, and then the 11th comes in and hits a home run. Not to mention Berkman coming in and smacking that ball around
Yeah.
and bringing the Rangers back. I mean, the last 3 innings of that game, there were so many lead changes, so many momentum shifts. Phenomenal pitchers coming in and getting shelled, and the lore that was created in those um, was phenomenal. And had that not happened, um, you know, a guy like, you know, David Freese, a guy like Todd Frazier, the legend of Yadier Molina.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, those things don't necessarily happen. The Carpenters, the Wainwright,
Mm,
those don't necessarily happen without that series, because
mm,
after that, that's when the Giants went on their run. And it
right.
was, they kind of peaked in there, right? So the Rangers made it twice. They lost to the Giants and lost to the Cardinals.
Mhm.
The Cardinals, as a franchise, as we mentioned before, second winningest franchise in all of baseball, right? As far as World Series go, and
Yeah.
that to me was probably one of the best games that I've ever seen that had a championship attached to it.
Mm. Pujols, I feel like is he among one of the more underrated all timers, or would you say he's properly rated?
Um, well, so it's hard for me to say because I'll tell you
Mm,
what, um, I rate him extremely highly. I
Me
think
too.
he's, um, I don't know what the average Boston fan thinks of him, but he's probably one of the best pure offensive players
yes.
that I think I've ever seen. Um,
He's the only other right-handed hitter, pure right-handed hitter that I'd put in the class of Manny Ramirez that I've ever seen hit in
oh,
my lifetime.
I love Manny. I think he's a phenomenal hitter. I don't love him as a person, but I'll
No.
tell you what, I think he's a phenomenal hitter.
Yeah.
I will tell you without batting an eyelash that Albert Pujols is leagues above what Manny Ramirez was as a
Yeah.
hitter. And Manny Ramirez is one of the most pure hitters that I think I've ever been able to see. But what Albert Pujols did at the plate and how he controlled, I mean, he could control an at bat and he had no control over the at bat. I mean, think about it. The pitcher does. He was phenomenal at the plate. Who else I put in his category as far as being skilled at the plate, who I think is way underrated, um, is Joey Votto. But
Oh,
he's
okay.
not
Yeah.
as much of an impact hitter as Pujols was.
Right.
I mean, you know, we opened up this podcast series with talking about Shohei Ohtani being one of the best players we've ever seen, right? And we referenced his 2 seasons that he just had recently had in last year's as far as at the plate. Pujols did that 10 times
Mhm.
in his career. Find me somebody else who did
Unreal.
that.
I mean,
You
there's
know,
4 players with 700 home runs,
Yeah,
and he's one of them.
yeah,
yeah.
he's one.
So
Yeah,
Bonds, Aaron, Ruth,
yeah,
and Pujols.
yeah.
It's just as I was thinking about Pujols, I guess, and maybe it's just because of the way he seemed to carry himself, because he, at least from a distance, he seemed to carry himself in a very unassuming, humble sort of way.
Mhm.
And and so like the comp that kept popping into my head from another sport is Tim Duncan, who's another guy who is just a freaking basketball robot. He's won 5 titles, one of the great players of all time, and yet I don't feel like he'll always get mentioned in those debates
No, he's a
because of
very
how,
underappreciated player.
yeah, just how unassuming he was.
Yep.
And I I just kind of get a similar vibe from Pujols. So whenever I think about it, I'm like, he was just a constant forever, and he was so good.
So let me ask you this: if I were to say Mike Piazza, would you give me any lore about Mike Piazza? Some fun facts you know about him?
Uh, well, the first thing that stands out to me is Roger Clemens throwing a broken bat at him.
It was my
Okay.
first thought too.
Okay. Yeah. What else?
A good power hitter who was a mediocre catcher.
Okay.
He's the greatest hitting catcher of all time.
Right.
I
Okay.
think.
Anything about his draft?
Hmm.
Yeah, he was like 700th or something like, or the 62nd round, or
He was a 62nd round. He was a
Whoa.
1392nd pick.
Holy
yeah,
crap.
He was a favor for Tommy Lasorda.
Tommy Lasorda. Yeah,
Yeah, he
yep,
was his
Wow.
nephew or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he ended up being the greatest, like hands down, the greatest hitting catcher ever to play the game. Albert Pujols was drafted in the 13th round.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So in mind you, those rounds didn't even exist anymore that Piazza was drafted.
Yeah,
He was the 402nd overall pick. Probably
wow.
one of the greatest pure hitters to ever play the game.
Yeah.
Right.
What he missed on the scouting report.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of
Yeah.
people missed on the
Yeah.
scouting report.
And I'll tell you what, he wasn't one of those guys that, you know, even needed to get acclimated to the game. When he came up as a third baseman, not even a first baseman,
Mm.
when he came up as a third baseman, my man was raking.
Mm.
Like, and if you watch highlights of him hitting, when he makes contact, it just looked different. Manny had some beautiful shots, but when Pools hit those line drives, it looked funny because it
Mm.
didn't look real. It almost looked like there was a trampoline that the pitcher was throwing against, and it was just ricocheting off because everything was hit hard. Everything. Pujols, 100%.
I feel like
One
he
of
had the largest forearms I've ever seen. Kind of like a human Popeye.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, he got a little bit bigger. I mean, but he played for 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the guy had a career. Um, and it's a shame what happened to him in LA, especially the last, 4 seasons of his career, because he wasn't that guy.
Mm-mm.
I don't think he'd be looked at as fondly or as favorably as he is now had he not gone back to St. Louis
Mm.
and had the season that he did and, lead them to a playoff. I mean,
Yeah.
it was kind of like a last hurrah coming back and being able to go there. But I'll tell you what, um, you know, that was incredible what he
Friggin'
did in
Angels.
2022.
Friggin' Angels just suck the life out of any great player.
They did it to Hamilton too. I mean,
That's right.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, 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 listen, you're not gonna if you wanna throw shade at
I
the
don't blame to the crowd.
Anaheim,
Yeah.
California, Los Angeles, Angels of
Yeah.
Anaheim on Third
Uh-huh.
Street with Beverly Hills on the corner. I don't give a shit. Go ahead, throw shade at Angels. You're not gonna hear me argue. All right. You're not, you
I know
know.
you'd like that little pot shot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm here for it, you know. But yeah, I mean what an impactful player, you know. So now
There's
let
been
me
a
ask
lot
you
of great
this.
baseball, and we're kind of in the midst of a game right now that's fixing to be a pretty entertaining one here with Dodgers Padres. Looked like the Padres are going to run away with it, and the Dodgers pulled up close. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this game plays out.
Yeah, what do we have for a score right now?
It's 6-5 Padres, bottom of the seventh.
All right, all
Yeah.
right. And I see Tatis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is. She says it. They are just launching these. Even the outs are long outs in this game.
Yeah.
Now, San Diego, that's a huge ballpark.
Yes, cavernous. Yep.
It is huge. Now, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on Fernando Tatis and um the allegations of PEDs with him?
Oh, have there been like hot off the presses
Well, he tested
allegations?
positive, right?
Yeah, so he tested positive for a masking agent.
Oh, well, that's what Manny was getting popped for
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
his time with the Dodgers, right?
yeah, yeah. Now and I don't remember what he said was the ailment. He did a couple of things that kind of tarnished his reputation because I mean he came up. I mean he was a throw-in um from the White Sox. Um I don't even remember who they got. Was it Pomerantz? Then went from San Diego to the White Sox that Tatis was thrown in there. I don't even remember anymore. But
Hmm.
um, he became, I mean, the face of not just San Diego, but I mean, for a while, the young kind of guard in baseball that
Hmm.
was flashy and,
Oh
throwing the
yeah,
middle finger at the old guard.
yeah.
But he got hurt um, and got popped for PEDs, and I think it was a prescription that he said that he got in the Dominican Republic that was to treat something, and I think it was a legit medicine to treat that, but it
Hmm.
came back as a masking agent, so he got popped. The other controversy with him was that he actually got into a motorcycle accident and didn't tell the Padres. So when he was going to report for the spring training that year, he was already hurt, and so he, despite having that happen, um, was in some pretty hot water with the Padres in general. And I believe that was the second accident on a motorcycle. Um, and so since then, he went from being like this star of, potentially, excuse me, the future of baseball to being now a kind of a bit of a pariah.
I mean, I think the players know what's going in their bodies. If you don't know what you're putting in your body, you're like, you know, you're an idiot.
Especially when you're a finely tuned, high level athlete like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I I don't have a lot of problem with them using certain things like HGH, because the thing that people say about it is that it helps you recover from injuries faster. It doesn't put on muscle from what I understand. It might, I don't know. But most people use it to recover from injuries.
Mm.
Obviously, fuckface Clemens did it. And I'm trying to think who else. I think Peyton. I don't know if Peyton Manning used it or not. Maybe not. I
I
thought he.
think Pettit did. Pettit did,
Yeah,
right?
Pettit did.
Yeah, Pettit did. Yeah. I'm not sure what Peyton Manning used for his neck injury.
He did. Didn't he do the platelets rich plasma replacement or something like that?
Yeah,
Something,
He also went to
something like that.
Germany for it, I think.
yeah. But I don't really have an issue with HGH. Um, just at least from what I know, unless it's used for something else. And I think in terms of the steroids, it was so rampant at the time. The way I look at it when players go to the Hall of Fame, even with an asshole like Clemens, how many people took steroids and they weren't Roger Clemens.
Mhm.
So, and I have a lot of, you know, like kind of knocks on his career. I always try to find some. His postseason performances, coming out of the game in game 6, which I didn't get to. I'll do that the next or one of the upcoming things. I'll get to game 6, 86, and that the whole aftermath.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I just think with the Hall of Fame, I just think my view on it is that eye test again. So there are a lot of players that use steroids but are not Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens or even somebody like Paul Merrill or Alex Rodriguez. Like to me, those guys are no brainers. So is Manny Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
Honest with you.
Yeah. So for you, Tatis making this mistake, not that big of a deal.
He paid for it, right?
He did.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, he ended up affecting his team in a very negative way. And that's kind of to bring things a little full circle too. That's one of the things that Manny Machado stepped up when all that went down and became that leader, became that guy, because a lot of times when he was reprimanding somebody, it was Tatis. But now here's a little impactful thing. Tatis doesn't do that, doesn't become injury prone, doesn't get moved to right field. Is Bogaerts still in a Red Sox uniform today?
Probably
Possibly.
not.
No, well, yeah. Actually, I agree with Quinn because they didn't want to pay him. And quite frankly,
who else would have?
He's 34, I think, 35, something like that. I wouldn't have paid him that either.
The amount that he did get paid, but what I always had a problem with is that I always get the sense that he would have stayed with us if there was a slightly more respectable offer given to him, even if it wasn't as high as the Padres, had ended up giving him. So like, I feel kind of torn with that one, but yeah, I just think that we were ready to move on from any big contracts, unfortunately.
And when anybody talks about a trade in any sport with me, like, would you trade Xander Bogaerts, Matt? Would you trade Mookie Betts? Would you do this? Would you do that? I'm like, well, what are you going to get for him? Like it depends on what you get for him. Mm-hmm. People ask me if I would have traded Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Well, what are you going to get for him?
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to get like
the difference,
2 number 1 picks, and the draft is, has Wembanyama, and then like another difference making guy, I'll go for it. But I think in baseball, when you make a trade, it's all about what you get back. And if you're losing somebody to free agency, you got to figure, okay, who's going to replace it? The Red Sox haven't been able to do that.
Well, yeah, because freaking
Trevor
Story has been injured nonstop.
And he can't hit. And and I didn't know this, but somebody was talking about it the other day. I guess a curveball doesn't break as much in Colorado as it does other places.
There's not as thick.
So we can't hit a curveball.
You just can't trust any of the offensive numbers coming out of Colorado.
Yeah. It's a fun place to watch a game. I've been there many times.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's hard to like kind of know with this steroid era. There's part of me that laughs at the fact that they keep Clemens out, but the truth of the matter is I would vote him in. It's about as accomplishments on the field.
Well, I'll tell you what, I do want to ask one more question, but let me just say, in Rolo, I know it's your turn to pick the topic, but this one keeps coming up, and I think I want to twist the bulb on this one and see if it lights up. I want to talk about the steroid era and its role in the Hall of Fame, specifically with regards to Pete Rose. Right? And not only that, okay, I want to talk about the impact of the game of both of those. Gambling, right, and steroids.
I agree. We can really make a meal out of that topic. I'll tell you that right now.
To me, it's very simple. I don't understand why they can't separate Pete Rose as a player and a manager, or what he accomplished on the field as a player and all the other stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I would agree with you.
I understand gambling is a big no-no. Gambling on your team is an even bigger no-no. But he arguably put more effort into his play than any player in history. So like, I can't imagine him ever throwing games as a player.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
So
I'm gonna hold my comments until the full episode.
Yeah, same.
I'm gonna hold everyone in suspense.
Yeah.
Same.
To me, that's very simple.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's a good conversation for next week. I'll tell you what, one of the questions that I have for you, and this is impacting me, specifically when we think about, you talk about trades, right, and free agency. One of the things, and this is topical too because we have him. I think he just ended the last inning. Oh wait, no, he's still. Oh no, he must have. Did he just hit a home run? Was that Freeman that hit a home run?
Freeman hit a single. He got on base, but now someone's pinch running for him, I believe.
Okay, that's why he was going to the dugout. Okay.
Yeah.
So Freddie Freeman signed free agency with the Dodgers. Right? Do you guys know the story of how he exited Atlanta?
No.
Other than he won the World Series and left.
Okay. All right. So this is interesting because it impacts me and it brings up the trade thing. Because we traded Matt Olson,
right,
to Atlanta. Freddie Freeman gave the Braves an opportunity to counter and make an offer in general for his services. His agent never presented that offer to him.
Oh, wow.
And so when he found out that happened was actually during the middle of the season when he returned back to Atlanta and he actually got to sit down and talk to the GM. He subsequently fired his agent because his agent manipulated his decision. I don't remember the numbers, if it was a higher number, but the agent was thinking that he probably would accept the Atlanta numbers and it wouldn't be as advantageous financially.
You should sue that agent.
I'm sure there's got to be something. But he
you know what that reminds me of?
But
you guys remember the story of Bobby Orr?
I don't know that.
So he had an agent named Alan Eagleson, and at the end of Bobby Orr's time with the Bruins, he had knees that he couldn't even stand on. So he was traded to the Blackhawks in his last 2 years of playing, and I guess the Bruins wanted to keep him, like, to maybe not even as a player, but like in the front office. And it turns out that they wanted him in ownership. So they presented an offer, and this guy Eagleson didn't tell him about it. And he screwed all kinds of people, this guy Alan Eagleson. And they took him out of the Hall of Fame, and he went to jail.
Wow.
Really?
Damn.
So he could own the Bruins, Bobby Orr.
Interesting.
Underhanded chicanery by these damn agents.
Yep. Scumbags.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a very similar thing with Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, I'm actually going to see if I can pull it up.
He's a hell of a player. I wasn't impressed with him in Atlanta for a while, but he's a hell of a player.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that wasn't flashy.
Yeah,
but he was consistent. My man was a cog in the thing, and it's pretty nasty. What he can do. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame player. I think on his way, especially with the rings.
I would say so.
So let me see if I can find out. I know that when he went back to Atlanta, he was balling.
Yeah.
Because he probably would have stayed there, to the point where there were some thoughts that he was, a little too emotional about it now playing for the Dodgers and being there. And I think there was even some comments saying, hey, listen, you have to shut it down because this is getting too much. So it's pretty nasty. So the conduct did not occur.
I mean, I'm sure that, I know the Dodgers paid him a pretty penny. That's with their players. But that's not cool.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I think I respect, not I think, I respect a lot about certain teams, and the Braves being one of them, is that the Braves tend to hire local or draft and develop local players to Atlanta, right? You think about like the Jeff Francoeurs, the Chipper Jones, the Freddie Freeman's was an LA guy, but bringing back Matt Olson was actually one of the reasons why they went out and sought him out. They have a history of developing and using guys who are fairly local. It almost makes it more like a home team, which is always my argument as to, why am I not a Red Sox fan? My neighbors aren't playing there. Half these guys never lived in Boston, nor will they after they're done their playing career.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not rooting for my home team. I'm only rooting for an address. Right? Atlanta wasn't that way.
Yeah. The only thing I would say to that is when you're in Georgia, you could play baseball longer.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like you could play a longer season.
Yeah, oh, yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, listen, I wish I was down south.
Yeah.
Because I could play my game year round.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to hear any arguments from me and how there's a disadvantage to do that. But that doesn't mean that players from up north don't get drafted. They do.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Smoltz?
He was a Michigan guy.
Oh,
Bill
Glavine.
Yeah. Glavine was Bill Ricca, I think.
Bill Ricca,
yeah. I mean, Bobby Kilty.
Yeah. He was on the 017.
Yeah, DiSarcino was a big local guy.
Yeah. Maloney.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Eckersley.
Viak.
Eckersley was a California guy.
Oh, that's right. No, yeah, he did transplant. Yeah. Fidrich.
Yes, right down the street.
Yeah. Marquis Fidrich.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sad
Bird.
story, that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't he die in a tractor in Vermont? Yeah.
Mm.
Here in North, he had a farm in Northborough, and his tractor fell on him.
Oh,
That's
geez.
what it was.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Unreal. But Bill Lee, is he a local guy?
Spaceman Bill Lee?
Yeah.
Where
Was
he's
he
from.
local?
Um, he
Some
probably
reason I was thinking he was.
be able to tell you.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, I mean, unless you're in South Dakota, I mean, the only out of the Dakotas, the only player that I can think of that's actually from there is Mark Ellis. I'm sure there's more, but that's the only one that comes to mind. But there's opportunity to develop local talent.
I mean, Fisk was from Charlestown, New Hampshire.
Mm.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, the rest.
I guess my point is, if I could sit here and say some of these guys we're rooting for are actually from,
Yeah,
even regionally,
yeah, I get it.
that would make more sense to me.
Yeah.
But I don't have to swear allegiance because I'm in close proximity to the ballpark. I
Mm.
do love Fenway Park. I am a fan of Fenway Park. No allegiance to the players.
Well, I'm growing to feel less allegiant to the players day by day as well.
Listen, you know what? I want both of you to pull up your big boy pants, learn how to deal with a team that doesn't want to spend money, and still love the damn game. All right? You're gonna
Well,
fall in love with some of these guys. If the dick fits, wear it.
Oh, yes.
interesting
I could say something
analogy.
else.
So the only thing I would say to that is the A's may have, not spent money, but they also didn't charge,
Mm.
$150 to sit in the bleachers and $70 to park and $18 for a terrible beer, and $30 for the Nesson app.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really pisses me off.
Yeah.
Well,
That I can't
guess
even
what?
watch the games.
When they started to, guess what didn't happen? Fans didn't show up.
Mm.
And if you're not happy with how your team's performing and the cost, don't show up.
Amen.
They're going to have to do something.
The problem is it hasn't been effective yet because Fenway's too much of a tourist trap. You just get outsiders coming in. So it's like they don't end up feeling it in the bottom line.
How long's it been? How long's it been since you've been feeling about this, like this about your team?
Oh, since 2000, really since we traded Mookie. I'd say since we traded Mookie, that was a real inflection point.
2019? Well,
2019,
2020 season.
but yes. When we brought on that freaking automaton, Chaim Bloom, replace an actual baseball guy, Dave Dombrowski, who doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, for actually doing a pretty good job with our farm system, even though he was also a big spender. Like he did better than people gave him credit for at the time when people were saying he was plundering our farm system to just bring in big league talent. He had a good eye for stuff when you see guys coming up and you find out, oh, he was a Dombrowski draft. And just that whole shift, getting that freaking clone from Tampa to run our team when he had never done anything close to that before. He became the figurehead that was responsible for the horrible Mookie trade, which again, going back to what Matt said, what are you getting back? Some might have argued that we wouldn't have been able to sign Mookie, that Mookie did not want to remain here. So you had to get out in front of that and at least get something for him. And we got garbage. Absolute garbage. And pennies on the dollar for a talent like Mookie Betts. And so even if I would have still been miffed about trading away Mookie and feeling like our owners are being cheaper, would have kind of helped been a soothing balm if we had gotten some better prospects or better players in return, and we didn't. So, and then ever since then, that 2021 blip was nice when we actually got to the ALCS again, but that was clearly, uh, you know, that was the anomaly over the last 5 years.
So the reason I called in last week was because to Tony Maz was I'm disgusted with the whole product. Disgusted with it. I've never been more disgusted with the Red Sox brand and product than I am right now. I should never, ever have to search for the Red Sox on TV, ever. Never. With the prices they charge, the fan base they have, the money they make, the revenue they bring in, the Red Sox are a cash fucking cow. And I should never, ever have to pay what I pay either for cable services or YouTube TV, which it's not on, or Hulu or anything else. The Red Sox are not there. They're not available. And that's going to bite them in the ass, and I hope it does. They could operate like the Bruins and the Jacobs do, where they just don't care about the community. They don't care about the team. They don't care about the city. But I think that's dumb. And that's where they made all their money. They have the Fenway Sports Group because of Fenway, because of us, the Red Sox. And that's what pisses me off. Even if they're bad, I can watch, at least the Patriots, I can watch on the TV, even though I'm disgusted with them too.
Yeah.
But, at least the Patriots I can see. And, if I go to Fenway, if I bring my son, you're looking at a $300 day.
Now, I got to tell you, and I don't know how much you've been hearing about this, but this isn't just a unique problem to the Red Sox as far as viewership.
Yes.
And having access to local games.
Yep.
The majority of the league has been having this problem locally in blackouts and the RSNs, the regional sports networks, the contracts with the cable companies. And if you don't have a sellout, you're not watching the game. Those type of things have been historically been happening. One of the and I don't want to go too deep on this because I think this is a whole nother topic altogether, and we should probably end pretty soon. But I went in 2013, the year that you guys won again, right? That was that year?
Yep, 2013. Yep.
Yeah, because of the Boston bombing and all that.
Yep.
And so I misspoke earlier. It was the even years that the Giants won.
Right.
So 2013 was the year I probably went to the most games. For whatever reason, single guy, having disposable funds, I decided I was just gonna. So I bought a couple of sports packs where it was like 5-game series. What I did too was I started buying monster seats because I could get them when they were playing the Royals, when they were playing the Twins, when they were playing the A's for sometimes less than $100. God forbid, I even tried to get them, back then against the Rays, or I tried to get them against, the White Sox because they were hot back then. You're talking $200 to $300. You've always been a very expensive team to go see.
Yep.
The only difference now is that you were spending money on the players that were going. You were spending money on the product that was on the field.
Yes.
Now you're not doing that.
Nope.
And I think that's a larger problem throughout the league and maybe throughout the whole country than it is just in Boston.
I agree, but it should never happen here.
I agree with you. I think you folks have amazing riches that even now, hearing you guys complain about how things are, I would love to have your payroll.
Mm. Well, right,
I
because
would.
we're still at what, like 170 or something like that, or
I
150.
I could probably field 4 of my teams with your payroll.
We could also go to 25 A's games for one Red Sox game.
Yeah, no, you could.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, no, you could. Yeah, 100%.
well, if the A's had a stadium.
Yeah, remember, I don't have a home right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I'll be interested to see how much it costs next year to go
Sacramento.
to Sacramento. Yeah.
so I haven't looked, but I've heard that the first game there are some seats that are selling for well over $1,000.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true. One of the reporters that used to work for the A's has now been fired. Certainly has some sour grapes there. But he mentioned that on StubHub right now, because the seats have already been sold, that those seats are actually going for that amount. I'm
Oh,
gonna see if I can find it. Um,
In an unrelated story, so I'm supposed to go to the game on Sunday. This is Jake's first game, and I need to get like a cheap ticket, because I need that extra ticket. My friend's going to give Jake his other ticket, and they didn't have any tickets below $100. And I was like, I was going to wait till Friday to see how far they'll go down. But
mm,
now Freak May's starting
mm,
back up.
right.
um, so unrelated but related.
Mm.
My wife wants to um, sign up my daughter for dance. I am not excited about this.
Uh,
It's gonna
How come?
cost me $630
Oh yeah.
between now and May. Not to mention
yeah.
recitals. Not to mention
Welcome to
drag.
activities, Mr. Greco.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
StubHub. First game at Sutter Health Park in Sacramento, California. Section 103, row 11, $970.
Wow.
Section 121, row 11, $1,163.
Sheesh.
Most expensive that I can see, the Governor's Club,
Ooh,
section
lots of job.
113, row 26, $2,419.
The
Good luck selling
Governor's
them.
Club. Do I
Yeah.
have to
Oh,
wear a top hat and a monocle if I'm in that seat?
Yeah.
dude, you better be made out of platinum.
Yeah. Good luck selling that.
Yeah, not going to happen. But I'll tell you what, my owner would love to tell you that if you buy that and you spend that much money, now granted, those are resale, those are people who are trying to profit off this.
Yeah.
But if you want to spend that money, you can see potentially, Aaron Judge hit a home run.
Mm.
Nobody from my team. Aaron Judge, maybe. Um, if you're lucky, maybe a guy we used to have, Marcus Simeon. He'll go yard for you. Maybe Matt Chapman will do that for you. You know, maybe Olson will come and hit a home run. Maybe Sean Murphy will come and hit a home run.
Your owner's
I
such a
would say
ding.
that's a great idea, John Fisher. I've been meaning to go to New York for a long time.
Mm.
Yeah, awful, awful.
Just like I did this year. I said, John Henry, I'm really going to enjoy watching your team in Baltimore
Mm.
and giving
It
my
was,
money
pro-
to the Orioles.
it was
Yeah.
probably still cheaper than going to Fenway.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Not a lot, but yeah, it was cheaper. Yeah. Yep.
I'm curious what their new owner is going to do.
Me too.
That ownership group in Baltimore,
Yep.
can change course. And I know we definitely got to end this because we're all yawning like crazy, and I'm
Yeah.
starting it. I'm starting the yawn train. But I'll tell you what, and I have a home inspection tomorrow morning.
Oh
But
gosh.
when we're talking about, um, you know, when is a good time to suck? I think there's a strategic thing where there is a good time to suck. And living by experience, I will tell you that you may not see the colors before the fog moves. That's horrible expression. But I'll tell you what, um, if I were the Red Sox, or I were a Red Sox fan, I would think now is a really good time to suck
Mm.
because you have an opportunity to rebuild while some other teams are getting so much better and they're going to be a lot more competitive than you are. And if you can do this well, you can be good again for a long time. The
Just lower
Yankees
the
are always going to be the
prices.
Yankees. What's that?
Just lower the prices to match
Yeah. Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
quality of
yeah.
the team.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And historically, and I guess this was my point about 13. I mean, this was after chicken and beer, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tickets became much more affordable, and that was part of me spending money on going to those games.
And after a last place finish.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so maybe next year you'll see some of that.
Yep.
But you know, or I know, or Orioles is going to be great for a while. I think the Blue
And
Jays surprised everybody in how bad they are.
yeah, yeah, the Orioles are going to be great for a while and continue to flame out in the divisional round at best.
Yeah, I've been surprised by that.
Yeah, don't count on it next year.
Yeah.
You have a young core that's going to have that experience now, and I think you're going to have an owner who's going to start upping and putting together a decent team.
Just because
Don't
you
get
said
used
that,
to the
Greg,
Orioles being the fizzles.
Yeah.
just because you said that now, I'm going to guarantee it. I'm gonna put the Quinn guarantee on it. They're going to fizzle next year.
That means nothing.
Quinn
That means that.
seal, Quinn guarantee. They're going to fizzle.
Listen, I'll tell you what. It's like one of my favorite comedians said. You know, he was talking to one guy who was hopping on a plane, this buddy of his, and he told his buddy that, you know what, I hope your plane crashes. And he's like, don't say that to me. What if that actually happens? And the comedian's like, well, you know what? That would be amazing. I'd gladly trade your life to know that I have the power to do that. In fact, if I have that superpower, I'm gonna go and play the lottery right now and do. So if your little Quinn Jinx is a legit thing, then buddy, you are doing the wrong thing. You should be doing something else with your life as opposed to being a therapist and talking to us about baseball at night. You could be changing the world for good if you can control the fate of a whole baseball team.
Well, then you're welcome for spending all my time on talking with you guys.
Also, you know what? I do feel honored. I feel honored to be able to spend all this time with you both. And that being said, we're gonna stop yawning in
Yeah.
people's faces. Gentlemen, next week, are you guys good to talk about the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Hall of Fame, steroids and gambling.
All
Yep.
right,
Sounds like a real hoot.
all
Works
right,
for me.
gentlemen. I'm ending the recording.
All right.
Thanks for listening to us. Thanks for watching us. Sorry we're yawning in your faces. Enjoy the game. Don't worry about us.